Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Establish the Collection. I am Cody Main, joined as always by my co-host Gary Hartman, who is looking awfully refreshed after a week off in Denver. Gary, how's it going, buddy?
It's good, man. It's good to see your face. I know it was only a week off, but it felt like forever. I missed it, and I'm very excited to get going here today. I had a great little trip. Great to get back out on vacation, but happy to be home. Happy to talk some cards.
You get a week off in Denver, hiking the mountains with Levitan and Wiggins, and I get 2 weeks with 3 kids and my wife in Kansas.
Basically the same.
We're different levels of refreshed right now, brother.
You were in Kansas?
No, my wife was in Kansas. Well, I'm
while
stuck
your
here
wife
in
was in
Nebraska.
Kansas.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so the best part is my wife gets back and she comes back with a cold. Knock on wood. Hopefully not a COVID cold, right?
Sure.
But she gives it to the entire family. So now the entire family's dealing with a cold. So apologies if I'm sniffling or clearing my throat or sound extra raspy today, but dealing with a cold after 2 weeks of hanging out with my 3 kids. So
you sound great to me. How'd you do being the first time with all 3 on your own? You do all right?
Yeah, I would like to say so. I don't know if the other family members that were here to help out would agree with that, but I think things went okay. The kids stayed alive and they're healthy and happy. So that's all I can ask for.
That is quite literally all you could ask for. Very good.
Exactly.
Good dad award.
All right. We teased it last week. Biggest giveaway in show history, our short 15 episode show history.
I think so.
It has to be our first slab. Why don't you pull that up for anyone watching on?
Remind the people. We got the Mark McGwire Team USA while we're in the midst of the Olympics right now. And that is our slab. And we had the little bit of the Giannis Prism lot with 5 different years, plus a bonus Spectra MVPs card. So you got 6 Giannis cards and the Mark McGwire PSA 8 USA Baseball rookie card slab. Both very timely cards, and I think it's a great giveaway. So excited to hear who won.
A great giveaway, very timely, as you mentioned. Want to thank you guys all for subscribing, rating, reviewing the podcast. I think last check right before we hopped on here, we looked at the numbers. We're up to 77 reviews, which is amazing on Apple iTunes. We really appreciate you guys for doing that. Gary and I have read each and every one, some funnier than others, some more insightful than others, but seriously, all honest feedback is appreciated. And anyone that's left any criticism or any recommendations, we've definitely heard them. We'll try to incorporate that into the show going forward. Once we get settled into football season and Gary and I's schedules kind of settle in, we'll look into adding more guests to the shows and talk about more sports specific stuff with some experts who have a little bit more knowledge than Gary and myself in those fields.
Yeah, absolutely. We really do appreciate the feedback, and we take it to heart. And we're trying to grow this thing and get better every day. So keep it coming. We want the suggestions, and we hear you, and we're excited to keep growing this thing.
All right. Without further ado, we spun the wheel off air. I told Gary the winning name. I can't believe this is something that I'm going to say and put into the ether. But the winner of this week's giveaway of the Mark McGwire of the Giannis lot is none other than Cat Killing Ginger.
All right.
Cat Killing Ginger. If you're out there, please, no more killing of cats. First of all, if you're out there, Cat Killing Ginger, you are the winner. DM Gary or myself at ghartman314 on Twitter, at cmain7. You can DM the show at Collection ETR. Get a hold of us. We will promptly send out your cards that are yours, Cat Killing Ginger. They're your cards. You won them fair and square.
We don't condone any harm of cats, but I do understand that being a ginger for some people has led to a difficult life. So listen, you do what you can, but we don't condone the name. But we do appreciate you listening, and we're very excited that you're able to win these cards. As soon as you get us your address, we'll get these out to you ASAP. And congratulations, Cat Killing Ginger.
All right, guys, continue to subscribe, rate, review the pod. We'll continue up with the giveaways for our OG listeners. I think I'm up next. There's a guy that I told you guys about in episode 14 that I'm buying, and I'm planning on giving one of those cards away that I've been buying. So we'll leave a little bit of suspense. We're going to have to hit a milestone.
Can I enter?
What?
Can I enter?
No, you can't enter. You didn't even know his name.
Well, you know what though? I want to get my UFC collection going. That's it. That's as much as I tease. I'll tease.
All right, good enough.
Very exciting.
Everyone knows who we're talking about, but that's okay. We'll tease that. Let's try and hit a big milestone, and then we'll give one of those away. But again, appreciate you guys for being here, for listening, for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It really does help the show out.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into it. Just quick news and notes section for today's episode. Obviously, a whole lot going on in the hobby. We've got really 2 weeks to catch up on. We're not going to take a whole lot of time out of today's show to do that. The biggest thing is the National. The National happened. Seemed like a raging success based off of everything that I saw on Twitter, on Instagram. Looked like it even poured over to Facebook a little bit for me. So everywhere, all over social media, the National kind of took center stage at the hobby. We had a few members in the Discord, the Establish the Run Discord, that mentioned that they attended. They shared some awesome stories. Sounded like it was a huge success. Anything to add to the week that was at the National?
No, yeah, I'm very happy to hear it went well. By all accounts, it was the biggest one yet, by far the most people. It was packed. And it to me, it's just a great sign for the hobby moving forward. Very happy to hear it was a success. Happy they were able to get it in amongst these times. And I can promise you I will be there next year, because it is in Atlantic City, confirmed. So end of July 22, I will be there. We're going to get ETR to fly Cody out. He's going to stay at my apartment in New York City. We're going to go to Atlantic City. We're going to get this thing going next year. You heard it here first.
I was just thinking, if you haven't swung your weight around with Adam and Taylor yet to get all expenses paid trip, they only need to pay for one guy.
They need to pay for one now. That's it.
And expenses, just give me flights out there, man. I'll hang with you. I'll crash at the Gary Pad
and our table space. That's it. But besides that, they're good.
And not maybe a few $1,000s to buy a few slabs while we're there. And Taylor, Adam, is that too much to ask for?
Maybe $5,000 each to gamble in AC. That's not that much. We're not asking for too much. All right.
Like we said, not a whole lot to get into as far as news and notes. We'll try and catch up slowly on those over the next couple episodes. But we really wanted to get back to our core, back to being sports heavy, and some analysis here. And Gary and I both love the transaction aspect of sports. MLB trade deadline just happened. NBA draft, NBA free agency is underway. The transaction is almost as good as the action, sometimes even better than the action. And the hobby certainly seems to agree. So let's kick it off here with the MLB trade deadline. I think the official MLB Twitter account summed things up perfectly when they just simply tweeted, "Was this the best trade deadline ever?" And look, we don't need to get into, was this the best trade deadline ever? Have there been better ones in the past? But no doubt was there a ton of big names involved. Kick it off. What was the move that caught your eye the most from a hobby perspective? Was there anyone that really jumped out at you among a list of big names that were on the move at deadline?
Yeah, I mean, it really might have been the biggest. There were so many stars / superstars that were moved. To me, the biggest storyline of this whole trade deadline was the Cubs blowing it up. They won in 2016. So we're not that far removed. And, they got the monkey off their back. And I think all Cubs fans would say, hey, they were happy they did that. And most of the guys that they shipped out over the trade deadline were guys that helped them accomplish that goal. So, 3 of their young to, prime type superstars are now in different markets and all went to big markets. So exciting. I actually just read a quote from David Ross. That said that maybe one day they can expect these guys to come back. So, hey, maybe it's literally just rentals for some of these guys, but they are now out. And of course, we're talking about Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, and Anthony Rizzo. 3 guys that I think all Cubs fans adore and are now on 3 teams that are trying to contend.
Did you see that all 3 of these guys hit home runs in their respective debuts with their new teams?
Is that right? I didn't realize that. I mean, the only one I knew for sure was Rizzo, obviously, because he went to the Yankees. So I've been watching him. But that's crazy. Wow.
So quick here on each of these guys, because they, like you said, they got shipped out from a Cubs team that was not contending, severely underperforming. Chris Bryant heads to the Giants, San Francisco. His Bowman Chrome base in a PSA 10 is up about 16% over the last 7 days, which includes a little bit of time before the deadline. Most recently selling for around $70. He's a 2016 NL MVP. The Giants are in the lead for the NL West, trying to hold off the Dodgers, who we'll talk about in a second here. Is there any takeaway in the short term for the rest of this season with his card market, or anything long term that you're looking at? Does this move do anything for you in terms of his market?
Yeah, Bryant's probably the most interesting hobby name of these guys. He's a former mega prospect and
Yeah.
obviously has had success on the major league level. Power hitting, somewhat of a five-tool type of guy. Goes to the Giants, who are actually the number one team in baseball right now. They have the best record in the league. So, we've seen them come out of nowhere to compete and win World Series like they're seemingly doing this year. So the only thing I could say with Bryant is, I think he has some like really serious collectors, people that have held this stuff for long term. If he can help this Giants team get it over the top, get past that Dodgers juggernaut in the playoffs, and he's a big part of that, I do think we would see another bump. We did see, as you mentioned, a quick bump right at the moment of the trade. Particularly, you mentioned his Bowman Chrome. That bump will last a little bit longer. He was in 2015 Topps and Topps Chrome. That stuff hit a quick boost, like 20% boost right when the trade happened. Now it's kind of like, if we're just taking his paper 2015 Topps rookie card, PSA 10, right back into that $50 to $70 range. So I think it's definitely the highest pop of these three guys because he was such a major prospect. So to me, it's kind of a wait and see approach. You probably can, if he stays hot with the Giants, you might be able to turn in a little bit of profits while his name's still fresh in that market. But again, he's somebody that has a lot of stuff circulating out there.
All right, his former teammate Anthony Rizzo heads to your New York Yankees. A much-needed lefty bat for your Yankees. They're trying to get back into contention here. I think I saw lastly they were 3 games back in the wild card standing. Are they going to make a push with Rizzo now?
Yeah, they've been playing better. The Yankees frustrated me to no end. But yeah, they won 13-1 tonight. That was nice to see. Rizzo's off to a white hot start, which is really great. He came in, he's hit a couple home runs. He seems to be on base every game. Great fielder as well. I'm really enjoying him in pinstripes. It's great to have that lefty bat in Yankee Stadium alongside with another guy that they acquired, which we'll get to in a minute. But from him, he's a 2011 rookie guy. He's been in the league for a long time. He has a great story. He's overcome cancer, is a World Series winner, was a huge part of those successful Cubs teams. To me, he's kind of a guy whose market is stabilized. You're going to see a little bit of bumps with him going to even a bigger market in New York if they can actually make a run, which, listen, I have no faith in this Yankee team. I think Boone stinks. They have 2 teams in front of them in the division, but I do think they'll sneak into the playoffs. So, hey, if he, the Yankees, at least in the New York market, I can tell you from being here, are under a microscope at all times. So obviously there's going to be plenty of collectors in this area that maybe want to get involved with him. Yeah. So his name will be a little bit more present for the rest of the season, where you might be able to kind of take some quick flips. But I think long term, I don't think this affects him much at all. He's probably one of the top 10 to 12 first basemen of the last decade, and has had a really solid career, and his market reflects that. His 2011 Topps update paper rookie card is going for around $200 to $250 right now on eBay. That's up like $75 from right before the trade. So you're seeing a little bump, and I would expect it to stay around that $200 range.
And the last of the Cubs' big 3, Javi Baez gets shipped out of Chicago, traded to the Mets, again in New York for Pete Crow Armstrong, one of their top prospects, if not their top prospect. You'll have to tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Baez, a 2018 NL MVP. Same story with him as far as his market goes. Some mixed reviews since his trade. The pop reports on these aren't huge. There haven't been a ton of sales yet. But his Topps Chrome base going anywhere from $75 to $125 after the deadline seemed to see a little bit of a spike. I don't know if you see anything different with any of his other cards, but like I mentioned, he hits a home run in his Mets debut. The Mets have a 2.5 game lead in the NL East. So it seems like all these guys are at least being traded to teams in the short term, get a little bump in their market in terms of the markets that they go to, a little bit bigger markets. And on top of that, they're playing for teams that are contending at least for a playoff spot or might have the ability to make a run. So anything you see differently with Baez?
Just quickly with Baez, to me, he's the most interesting. He's only, as you mentioned, only 2 years separated from the MVP season, and is has a lot of flash. So if you could really put it together in the New York market, I would say the Cubs and the Mets are pretty similar in markets. If you went to the Yankees, you might see a little bit of even a stronger boost there. But he is somebody that's flashy. He could be a superstar, super flashy, very marketable. And I actually really think that Mets team is solid. If DeGrom can come back healthy, I think they have a chance to also make a run. Right there with the Giants and the Dodgers and the Padres. The problem is the NL is a real juggernaut. But as you said, we have seen a little bit of bumps, particularly on that Topps Chrome rookie card. I like Baez long term. I like him. I think if the Mets hang on to him long term, he's somebody that I would look to possibly buy right now.
All right, a few other guys. Let's quick hit before we get into NBA talk here. Schwarber goes to the Red Sox. Scherzer and Trey Turner in a blockbuster deal to the Dodgers. Anything to take away from those? I know that you were kind of a big seller of Schwarber when we talked a few weeks ago. he's kind of having an outlier season in terms of at least an outlier first half of the season. He was in terms of his home run numbers, was just hitting for insane power. Any changes with your stance on Schwarber now that he's playing in Boston?
I just think the selling window just stays open longer now. He's on the best team in the AL, unfortunately, in the Boston Red Sox. So if this regular season isn't a fluke and they keep competing into the postseason and he keeps up his numbers that he was performing on Washington, you're going to see those prices continue to rise. So if you have Schwarber stuff, I'm all for selling it as the Red Sox go on a playoff run. To hit on Scherzer and Trey, obviously probably the biggest blockbuster, as you mentioned, the Nationals were able to get the Dodgers 2 top prospects back, Josiah Gray, a pitcher, Kybert Ruiz, a catcher. The problem with those 2 guys are they're a pitcher and a catcher. That's the problem, right? They're your 2 most least desirable positions from a hobby perspective. Ruiz is an interesting guy, switch hitter, who is one of the top tier catching prospects in baseball. So I would think that he might, get a little bit of a boost just from his name being around. Maybe he gets up to the bigs a little bit sooner than expected with the Nationals in rebuilding mode. So just somebody to keep an eye on. As far as Scherzer's concerned, he's one of the best pitchers of all time. His market's going to stay the same either way. If he helps them win a World Series, maybe you see a little bit of a bump. Trey Turner, not to get too into specifics, he's already pretty expensive. He's one of the young shortstops in the league. He does everything but hit for power. He hits for average. He steals bases. He's kind of a fan favorite. Kids like him. So he's somebody that was already expensive. I'm not expecting to see too much of a bump unless he's a big player in the Dodgers World Series run. The only other thing, Cody, real quick, I want to touch on, we missed on the Cubs guys, is the prospects coming back. Just want to touch on this real quick. You mentioned Pete Crow Armstrong. Pete Crow Armstrong was out of 2020 Bowman draft, was one of the Mets' top prospects. He's now listed as the Cubs' number 6 prospect on MLB. He's probably right around outside the top 100 range, probably like 90 to 110 in baseball. Interesting young name, going to the Cubs, and I would imagine he's a big part of their outfield in the future. So somebody just to keep an eye on. Certainly will have real opportunity there. The biggest prospect to me in those deals was who the Giants got back for Bryant, which was Alexander Canario, outfield. Now he's also the 7th ranked prospect for the Cubs. So him and Pete Crow Armstrong right there. Maybe that could be the future outfield for the Cubs. He was in 2019 Bowman Chrome. I like him a little bit more just because he's a little bit cheaper than Pete Crow Armstrong. However, he was still a big name in the hobby. So 2 guys to keep an eye on from a buying perspective. Keep an eye on how they're doing in the minor leagues. The Rizzo trade, no one of note from the Yankees. A pitcher, Vizcaino, and a middling outfield prospect in Alcantara.
Okay. Anybody else as far as trade deadline goes that you want to hit on before we move on to NBA talk here? I know your Yankees got another lefty bat with Joey Gallo from Texas. Does he do anything for you? I know he doesn't sound like you really trust the Yankees a whole lot, but Joey Gallo in pinstripes, does that do anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't trust the Yankees a whole lot as far as this Cashman Boone era has not been a very successful one, and I think everyone's taken a step back under Boone. But I'm a huge Yankee fan. I'm hoping for the best. I love that they got Gallo and Rizzo though, because the one thing this team was missing was power hitting lefties in that short porch in Yankee Stadium. What the interesting thing Gallo has going for him is we have him under contract for 2 years. So in all likelihood, or a year and a half, we have him for the rest of this year, make the run. That's great, and then in all likelihood, he will be a starting center or left fielder for us next year, which is fantastic. So I actually think he's in a really good spot hobby wise. You might have missed a little bit of a window to sell, but it's probably going to stay open a little bit longer while he's in New York and playing every day. He hasn't gone off to that same hot start as Rizzo has, but once he starts hitting a little bit in that Yankee Stadium porch, you might be able to see a little bit even more of a bump. I'm seeing that his 2015 Topps Chrome is also up around $75 to $100 just from some quick comps. He's going for around $250 to $275 on that PSA 10 right now. He's in a very good spot. And we always said this, power hitters in big markets is what sell. He's a true power hitter, 50 home run type upside power hitter. So somebody that I'm interested in both in the midterm and long term, with over the next year and a half that we know he's for sure on the Yankees.
I love it. You've gotten me more into the MLB from a collecting perspective. I've taken the advantage to buy a few guys that were injured and starting to sell some of those guys as they return from injury, some short buying and selling windows just to get the feel for how the MLB market operates a little bit. But that market's come and gone. The trade deadline has come and gone. We're transitioning quickly here in the sports world to NBA talk, and NBA has definitely taken over the sports world again, as it tends to do. It's become a year-round venture. It's become a year-round discussion point for anybody that's involved in sports or the hobby. And we transitioned seamlessly from MLB trade deadline to NBA draft and free agency. But first, we were off last week, so we didn't get any immediate reactions following the draft. So going back to Thursday, any thoughts after having a few days to chew on it from some of the guys that came out of the NBA draft?
Yeah, I mean, I love this time of year, and it's so fun that it's even more abbreviated with
Yeah,
everything that happened
back to
with COVID that
back
we
to
went
back.
finals, draft, free agency. So we'll go in that order. We talked about the finals last week. Yeah, I like this draft, man. I think it's fun. I think there's some really interesting names that could flash in markets that they might have the ability to kind of really take center stage right away. Obviously, starting with the top in Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green, both guys that will have the opportunity to kind of be the leaders on their team right off the bat. So very exciting and draft to me, just from a big picture view. What about you?
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on Cade because we've talked about this a whole lot, where things are going to land when it comes to when wax starts to come out, when we start to get new products for these guys, and where prices are going to fall when we get into box breaks and even buying singles. So Cade, if you don't know, it's a 6'8", 220-pound big guard. Uh, he can score at all three levels. He's a great shooter, but he's already getting Luka comparisons, right?
Yeah,
Like you're seeing it from mainstream media outlets. It seems a little bit absurd. So I wanted to get your take and where you think Cade is going to kind of fall on that spectrum. The size is going to give him those Luka comps, and the fact that he's not super over athletic, kind of has the that I don't want to say doughy body type, but kind of has that just big overall big physical body type. He's going to get the Luka comparisons, and where I fall on Cade, I think is going to come down to where the hobby falls on Cade. If they're pricing him at that level right out of the gate, and after products are released, and I'm having to pay that pretty penny to get involved in the Cade Cunningham streets, I might have to be out. So where are you at with Cade? Is he more Luka, or where does he fall in on that spectrum?
Yeah, let's keep our expectations in check here. I mean, to me, no one is going to be Luka
Right.
for a long time. So I do like Cade Cunningham as a prospect a lot. I'm with you. It's really going to be interesting to see what the hobby does as a whole with this whole class. So I actually think this class as a whole, especially coming off the draft, was considered a much better class than last year. Although that class has now overachieved LaMelo, Halliburton, those guys compared to what people were expecting. But I think Wax got up so high this past season. And a lot of that was twofold. One, LaMelo exceeded all expectations and became this kind of megastar for pop culture and pop culturally and on the court. And it kind of just rolled right over from the boom and the Zion class being so freaking nuts. So I think all those things kind of resulted in Wax this season being crazy, to the point where you can get Panini Select that just came out last week, still on Panini website tonight for $980 a box. The reason you can still get them is because they're $980 a box. So, right. I think that market will have to correct itself a little bit with the Wax having been so high this past year, and with this class maybe not having as much hype as the last two, just when you could put LaMelo into it. However, I do think people have been hyped about Cade Cunningham for a long time. He's a name that's been in people's minds for maybe 2+ years now. And I like him. I think that if he does hit, and I'm not saying he's going to be Luka, but if he does hit, I'm talking top 30-ish player in the NBA. He's in a big enough market in Detroit, and he's got that skill set that would translate to a strong hobby value. So I'm with you. I'm taking the wait and see approach on him. It'll be interesting to see what happens right when those products come out.
Yeah, after Cade, Jalen Green goes 102 to the Rockets. By draft night, it really wasn't much of a surprise. Evan Mobley was right there in a lot of mock drafts, but I think by draft night, it wasn't much of a surprise that the Rockets opted for Jalen Green. And I don't want to flag plant too many guys early, but I freaking love Jalen Green. Yeah. So if there's going to be a big price gap between someone like Jalen Green and Cade Cunningham, or maybe even Mobley, who had a lot of hype coming out too, I want to be in on Jalen Green early. And there's another guy that we'll talk on a little bit later down the board that the Rockets also drafted that we both like. So if we're getting involved in team breaks, you got a few opportunities there to get guys you like. I love that Houston's kind of in the early stages of this rebuild here, and he's going to get his chance to just blossom. And he's a 19-year-old kid, going to pack on some weight, I would assume, with an NBA weightlifting regimen and things like that. But he's extremely fast, bouncy, athletic, twitchy, whatever adjective you want to use for this guy. And is another guy that is capable of scoring at all three levels. He shot well enough from three. He can clearly finish at the rim. Super bouncy guy, going to be electric, I think. Has some warts on the defensive end that will give him some concerns early in his career, but what rookie doesn't? And I think some of his concerns are that he's a little over aggressive, which might lead to some runouts and some open court, pretty incredible dunks. So I think he's going to be a fun guy to watch. I don't know what your thoughts are on Jalen Green and the Rockets draft in general, and talk about our boy if you want to go into the other first round pick that they had.
Yeah, well, we're on the same page that of those three, Jalen Green is the one I'm most excited about, both probably on court and definitely in the hobby. So he's somebody that is going to be thrust right into that role to be able to basically be the leading scorer off the bat, probably put up 20 points per game in his first season. And you got the reason that he's most interesting to us is he's a scorer, and he's a pretty polished scorer already. Who it's interesting. It's almost like an oxymoron, but he's a polished scorer who's still raw, which is like almost exciting for his for his future outlook. So yeah, as you said, we've seen skinny guys succeed in the league before. We'd like to see him put him on a little bit of weight, but yeah, when you're talking about Cade, who's going to be kind of like the Trevor Lawrence ish, right, or the Joe Burrow from last year, if we're talking football, and then you're talking about Mobley, who is a big man. So historically, we kind of shy away a little bit in the hobby. Jalen Green's kind of going to be that perfect medium, right? He's going to be a potential all-star type scorer who will be cheaper than the top name, but in a better position than the other top guy in the class. So we're in the same boat on Jalen Green. Very excited about him, and also excited about what the Rockets are doing. And what you're referring to as far as what you were just getting into is we're both pretty high on the Rockets' other first round pick, Alperen Şengün, who is the center from Turkey. A lot of guys, he was in their top 5 or 6 prospects coming into the draft. I know Hollinger had him as like a top 3 or 4 guy. And to me, just watching some clips and he's a young kid. I'm excited about him, and maybe it's the Jokic effect. I'm not saying he's going to be Jokic, but just like these bigger, weirder looking big men from Europe that have
kind of awkward, right?
Kind of awkward have come in but have so much natural ability. And he's 19, and I mean, I'm very excited about the possibility of Şengün.
Yeah, so he literally turns 19 4 days before the draft, right?
Yeah,
so he's 18. He wins Turkish League MVP, which I know this gets talked about with Luka a lot, and I don't want to throw around these Euro comparisons lightly. Obviously, I'm not comparing him to Luka, and you're not comparing him to Jokic.
No.
But he's playing against grown-ass men as an 18-year-old, and he's a big dude. He's like 6'10", 240.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's kind of got an awkward body style about him a little bit too, big physical guy. But 18 years old, game's still developing. He wins league MVP playing against, 30, 25, 30-year-old men. So I'm excited about this guy. We at ETR are going to be on some of these too many Euro guys if we keep going at the rate that we're going.
I do want to say the Turkish league is no joke. That's like top 3 or 4 in Europe. I know for sure. So, the fact that he's won MVP of that league right at 18 years old and is, as you said, going against grown men, I wouldn't be surprised to see him, crack that rotation early, have some success earlier than people maybe expect. And, from a hobby perspective, if he is one of those big men that's more versatile, is a little bit better passer, could do more things than just kind of dunk and rebound. We've seen that have some value in the hobby. Obviously, Jokic is a little bit of an outlier, but Ayton we saw in the playoffs start to have some real value. And so again, from a guy like that, we'll get into this when these products come out, but the group breaks, like how can you not love buying the Rockets as compared to maybe some price like what the Pistons will cost, or the Magic even, which we'll get into in a minute, which I'm sure will be more expensive. So I like the Rockets a lot, what they did.
All right, you alluded to it, the Magic. We skipped over a lot of these names to go from 102 to Alperen Şengün. So let's give these early guys some love. What did the Magic do that you liked or didn't like?
Yeah, so I think the biggest first surprise on draft night was that the Raptors at 4 opted to go with Scotty Barnes, from Florida State, as opposed to Jalen Suggs, who obviously from Gonzaga, a world-class athlete, was maybe one of the biggest names in college basketball last year. And I think a lot of people think that Jalen Suggs probably actually has the highest floor of this entire class. So that was definitely a little bit of a surprise. Now, the Raptors are going to do what the Raptors are going to do. Scotty Barnes is a really interesting, versatile guy, 6'9", probably really slides into what the Raptors like to do with kind of those versatile wings. They have OG out over there, and they just re-signed Gary Trent. But I guess they like what Scotty Barnes, and I know a lot of people do. I'm not that excited about Barnes from a hobby perspective. He can't really shoot yet. That's concerning to me. It kind of reminds me of Patrick Williams at 4th overall last year. 4th overall pick. Not necessarily loving him from a hobby perspective, but the Magic, on the other hand, I love Jalen Suggs as a prospect. And I think the Magic finally caught a break in the draft here, getting a true just point general possible future all-star. The only issue there is that backlog in the backcourt in Orlando. So, they have obviously Jalen Suggs, I think, comes in and is probably already, the alpha, but they do have Cole Anthony was their first round pick last year. They have Markelle Fultz, former number 1 overall pick, who's starting to turn his career around before the injury last year as well. And then they also traded for RJ Hampton at around the deadline last year as well. So they have 4 first round point guard type players or combo guard type players that are young, and you can argue all have pretty solid upside. So it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, how do you think that that's going to shake out? They've got so many guys and only, really 96 minutes of playing time available for those guys. So you have Suggs, Hampton, Cole Anthony, and Markelle Fultz. Is there going to be a dip in any of those guys that you might like long term with Suggs coming in and theoretically taking over playing time immediately? Will RJ Hampton see a dip? We know he's a guy from last year's class. Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz. Any of those guys that may be on the move? Any of those guys that maybe have a chance to develop alongside Jalen Suggs that might kind of just become the number 2, I guess, to Jalen Suggs as number 1, if you will?
Yeah, I'll take it one at a time. First, I just want to say I like Suggs. He's one of my favorite guys in the class. I'm a buy on him when his stuff comes out. Let's take it from the other guys. So I actually think ultimately what's going to happen down the line, almost similar, and we'll get into this when we get into free agency stuff, with what happened with the Hornets last year. They had Malik Monk, Devontae Graham, LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, right? There's only so many minutes to go around with these guys. Now we're seeing that they have to trade off one of their young, promising guys in Devontae Graham, and they have to let Malik Monk rock in free agency. I think ultimately that's what's going to be what happens here. Let's say one of these 4 doesn't pan out, and let's say one of the 4 is going to ultimately get traded or something like that. So, you have to then do your own analysis, figure out who those guys are. I'm happy to provide what I think. I'm not a big Cole Anthony guy. I don't think he is somebody that I believe in long term. I think he's kind of a one-trick pony, scorer first, with limited upside in every other aspect of his game. So to me, he's the guy that I'd be fading. If you have Cole Anthony stuff, maybe wait till he ends up in another position. If he has a little bit of a chance to shine alongside Suggs in the backcourt, maybe Suggs, he goes and slides into that number 2 role. Suggs makes him look a little better, a 2-guard role. That's where I'm at. RJ Hampton's the interesting guy from a buy low perspective because now he's going to be buried. He looked really good actually at the trade deadline last year when he ended up in Orlando and he got real minutes. Now, some of that could be fool's gold. They were kind of full on tanking. They gave him every opportunity to have the ball in his hands. Teams maybe sag off against a lesser opponent. All that's fair, but RJ Hampton's maybe the buy low, deep sleeper of those 4 for me.
And the Magic get another lottery pick in Franz Wagner at 108, wing from Michigan. I don't know a whole lot about him. I'm going to lean on you for your analysis on Franz Wagner. If you've got any takes on Franz, is the Magic maybe a team that we should be buying with 2 guys in the lottery? Are they a team that we should be looking at come box break time?
Yeah, Wagner's a really interesting guy. Mo's little brother, much better prospect than Mo Wagner. Supposedly grew from 6'9" to 6'11" in the months leading up to the draft. I mean, wow. That's a huge deal. Michigan kid was a star in college with a lot of talent, and actually not a total negative on defense. Which you look at that body type, kind of 6'11", scorer inside outside. You might think that he's a total negative on defense. That is not the case with him. He works hard on both ends of the floor, and I think his potential is just getting tapped. He's somebody that stock was really rising. I know we were all over his props a little bit, also going over whatever they started at 10.5 or something like that. I hammered that, and people thought he would either go 7 to the Warriors or 8 to the Magic by the time draft rolled around, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I mean, the Magic, they have an interesting young core. We just mentioned all those guards. We like Suggs. They have Wendell Carter coming in. They brought in Wendell Carter as well. Yeah, I mean, they got, and Jonathan Isaac should be coming back from the injury. So yeah, they're from a hobby perspective, to see a leap over the next couple of years, even if just a couple of these guys hits, it's the same way you stockpile prospects in baseball. If you have 9 or 10 legitimate young players in the league, you really need 6 or 7, 5 to 7 of them to hit. You're in a pretty good spot. So yeah, I like Suggs. I like Wagner. I like what the Magic did.
Any other guys in the lottery that you're interested in before we get into some deep sleepers? I forgot one guy that I'm kind of bookmarking for later is James Bouknight. I kind of like his profile a little bit as a bouncy guy, athletic guy, a guy that can score. Wasn't a great 3-point shooter, so we'll have to kind of see how that shakes out. Was an okay free throw shooter, so I think that maybe there's some room for him to be an okay 3-point shooter above his 32% that he shot in college. Averaged 19 points a game in 2020, 2021. So he's another guy that I'm pretty excited for. Is a guy that I think that can come in and, kind of be a bouncy guy, a little spark plug that can score a little bit off the
Yeah.
bat. I don't know what you think about Book Knight.
I like Book Knight. Electric scorer. As we just mentioned, they just let Devontae Graham and Malik Monk walk. The Hornets sit, so he's stepping right into that third guard role alongside LaMelo and Rozier. So he's going to have plenty of opportunity. They like to run the 3-guard offense. And yeah, he slid on draft night. I think he was getting a lot of hype, going even as high as 6 to the Thunder in a lot of mock drafts right before the draft kicked off. So to see him slide towards the end of that lottery was a surprise. Certainly a name to keep an eye on alongside that young, exciting Charlotte team. Definitely.
Yeah, I see some player comparisons for Book Knight now. Jordan Clarkson was one, so 6-man of the year, Jordan Clarkson. That'd be a good comp for him, and if he can provide some of that scoring off the bench, and maybe get a role alongside LaMelo, that's a good outlook for a guy like that, especially early on in his career.
Absolutely. Other than Book Knight, who I'm with you on liking, I just think there's some interesting names to keep an eye on. We know what the Thunder are doing right now. They're taking as many upside guys as they can while they have all these entire assets. It's interesting to see that Josh Giddey out of Australia was the guy that they had their eye on, guard who could be, I think has a ton of upside from a scoring perspective. And 6'8", I believe, so big point guard or combo guard. They took him 6 overall. Same way as with these guys like Poku, and they turned Dort into something. They just gave SGA the max.
Yeah.
Presti knows what he's doing. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying this kid's going to turn into something great. I haven't watched much film of Giddey, but it's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Can he be a running mate next to SGA? If this does work, the kind of mini process that they're going through in Oklahoma City, he will be an interesting name because he's going to have every opportunity to be out there on the floor.
All right, enough of these young pups. We'll have plenty of chances to talk about these guys coming up as products start to roll out and we get more involved with box breaks and things like that. We got to get to the bell of the ball because every year NBA free agency takes over. There's trades, there's names on the move, there's names getting max contracts that you don't think should get max contracts. Duncan freaking Robinson is getting $90 million. So there's plenty to talk about with NBA free agency, even though the big names haven't necessarily been there. But there's going to be some guys that are on the move that really create on-court impacts. So I'll cede the floor to you. Where do you want to begin with NBA free agency? Is there a team? Is there a name? Is there something that stands out to you as a good place to start?
Well, you mentioned Duncan Robinson. Let's start with the Heat. I actually loved that Duncan Robinson contract. To me, it was actually a good deal. I'm not kidding. He's the best shooter in the league outside of Steph Curry. So
I know.
And for what that team is building, you got to keep him around. And I listen. I like it. So big news, probably the biggest actual changing hands or changing team free agent signing was Kyle Lowry, which kind of leaked out right before free agency started that the Heat were closing in on him. Gave him a 3-year deal, big money, $30 million a year, right? So Jimmy Butler also is coming in to get the extension. So the Heat are going all in, which is interesting in the time of the Nets window, in the time of the Bucks and the Sixers being there. But with Bam probably going to be, should take another step up. Butler, now Lowry is going to fit in, slide in perfectly next to those two. You got Duncan Robinson under control. They are a very, very intriguing team to me, both on the court and what that could possibly mean for their potential hobby prices, because we've seen Pat Riley kind of take these teams to next steps before as soon as 2 years ago. And now this roster is much better than that one. Lowry to me has always been a little underappreciated in the hobby. If he could do it again on this team, somebody to keep an eye on. But Butler's the one for me that if he can, be the alpha on a team that is a top 3 or 4 seed here and really make a run, he's somebody that to me is still undervalued as a top 15, 20 guy in the league.
Yeah, they're really going all in. They're, 36-year-old Kyle Lowry. They signed Jimmy Buckets to the 4-year max. He's going to be 36 or 37 by the time that deal's up. They give Duncan Robinson, a young guy, 5 years. PJ Tucker comes in for 2 years, $15 million. So, if a team is signing PJ Tucker, they're really trying to make a title run, right?
Absolutely.
So like you said, I guess the biggest talking point is it enough, and is it enough at the right time? I guess is the biggest question mark. Do they have enough to contend with the Nets? If it's a healthy Nets team, that they've also made some under the radar moves that I think we should talk about, at least from an on-court perspective, and what the big three are going to do. But man, I don't know if that's enough. If you're the Heat, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Bam, and then, some of these shooters and some of these, 3-and-D guys, I don't know if that's enough to get over that big three in Brooklyn. And then of course you got Giannis coming back, who looked unstoppable in the finals too. So it's a lot to take in, but I think if you want to make the case that the Heat can an Eastern Conference Finals contender or win a championship, I think you're also banking on a Bam breakout, another step forward for Bam. I've been big on Bam. I love Bam's upside. It's not necessarily Giannis type upside, but he needs to take a step offensively. We saw him completely shrink in round one this year.
Yep.
So yeah, I think if this team's going to take a leap, and if that's the bet that you want to make, then there's young guys like Tyler Hero that we saw have a ton of hobby value that's going to need to take a step forward. Bam's going to need to take a step forward. And then obviously Jimmy, I mean, that his stuff is going to balloon if he can take a team like this past someone like the Nets or someone like Milwaukee and get to a finals.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned Bam in more detail because I was going to do it as well. So he's the guy for me that I've actually been buying. So I've been doing it since the Heat were eliminated in the playoffs and the dip. And I know we've kind of backed away from base cards totally on this podcast and kind of in the hobby as a whole. But as we mentioned, things pre-2018, there's still some gems out there. So to me, the Bam base PSA 10 Prism from 2017 is a buy. So I actually have a couple of these myself, but there's only 763 pop on this card. It's not that bad. And it's floating around 90 to $100. So, and that's from highs of over 200 in the middle of the season. So like that to me is such a nice buy while that pop stays, even if it gets up to the mid like 1500 range, like, between 1,000 and 2,000. I like that card a lot. And I've been buying some optic hollow stuff rookie of him. The difference between him and some other traditional big men is that he's not, again, he does a lot. He's super athletic. He's an all-world defender. And I think he's going to keep adding things to his game because he's so young. Team USA is trusting him to be their starting center right now. Like he's, he's a really exciting prospect. And as you mentioned, the Heat need him to take a step up. And I think they need Tyler Hero to go back to end of rookie year Tyler Hero instead of second year slump Tyler Hero.
Yeah, they need Bubble Hero back if they're going to take the step forward. I can't believe that. I've been buying Bam dating back to when I first started getting into buying physical cards. So I can't believe that Bam's price is that low. It's pretty wild. I mean, even as Silver PSA 10, which has a pop of 449, can be found anywhere from 300, I guess 390 to 460 right now.
I love that.
So incredibly reasonable prices. Again, the pops are going to remain fairly low on these because they are pre-2018. We're seeing those pops stay low for all those guys. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great buy. And that's someone like you're doing. You can just stack a few of those up. And if there's ever times that you want to, offload a position of that at a profit, you can certainly do that while holding on to more of that bet.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a bunch of them. I have like an orange Prism rookie. I have a flawless RPA. So like maybe the higher end stuff I would hold a little bit, but yeah, I'm probably going to do just that. Like I'm stacking up a bunch of these base. And again, like I'm not huge on base at all. You guys know this about me probably at this point. My real investments are on colored and stuff that I know the circulation on, but pre-2018, there are some gems out there. And I really do think this is one right now. I go buy some Bam base PSA 10 Prisms if I'm all of you.
All right, let's keep it in the Eastern Conference. If the Heat made the biggest move so far of the NBA free agency period, the Bulls are probably number two, along with maybe a Western Conference team we'll get into here in a second. But the Bulls make a couple splash moves so far this preseason. They signed Lonzo, which they had been linked to a couple days before free agency began. 4 years, $85 million, huge upgrade for the Bulls at point guard. Then they go out. They had DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso. Who am I forgetting? What other names are now in town for the Bulls? But regardless, it seems like they've got an upgraded roster. I would say there's still probably a ceiling on that roster.
Oh yeah,
that's headlined by Lonzo and Zach LaVine and Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. I don't think that team, if we're talking about the Heat, maybe struggling to get out of the East with Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler and Bam. I think this team certainly has a ceiling on it. I don't know if they'll ever make a three. That's not fair. Lonzo Ball became a good 3-point shooter.
He did.
But this team's going to mid-range you to death. I don't know. What are your takeaways from what the Bulls decided to go out and do this offseason? And was it the right thing to do from a basketball perspective? And then what should we be looking at from a hobby perspective for some of these guys?
I have very solidified takes from a basketball perspective. They made that Vucevic trade in the regular season, in the trade deadline. They gave up 2 first-round picks. To me, that was a disaster right off the bat. I thought it at the time, and now they're desperate. They're desperate to be good. And like in credit to them, they made their roster much better, much better. They signed DeMar DeRozan, who I can't believe they gave $28 million to guaranteed for 3 years. I cannot believe it.
In this economy,
right? I don't mind the Lonzo contract. That's fine. Caruso, I'm a huge Caruso fan, and he's a very good defensive point guard. So yeah, huge upgrades to the roster, and now they're gonna have a full season of Vucevic. But to quote our good friend friend Mike Gallagher, he said it in Slack today to me. Yeah, selling out for the 6th seed during the Nets window is certainly a choice. So yes, it is. And they're basically like, from that perspective, it's a poor man's Heat, right? Like the Heat are doing it with maybe an actual chance to compete, where the Bulls are doing it with, let's be real, if everything goes according to plan and next year's a regular season with like not crazy injuries and everything, but listen, we just saw a season where the Suns and the Bucks were in the finals. You never know. But
right. And the Hawks made a run. And the Hawks,
and the Hawks, right. The Hawks are the better example, right? The Hawks made a run. So to me, it's like just to transition from a hobby perspective. Lonzo, I want to talk to you quickly about Lonzo because I know you had kind of put a position a little bit on Lonzo there. Did you do any selling off of that Lonzo right before the free agency marker?
Yeah. So I posted on Twitter. I basically took your advice. I remembered your wise words. Hype deserves an auction, and I was getting prepared for this. I had the drafts set. I've got a few Lonzo base cards, PSA 10, same class with Bam 2017. Mm-hmm. So I knew the pop counts weren't super high, but I think a lot of people are doing the same thing that I'm doing. But with that said, I posted a day before free agency started because I kind of thought this thing was going to get underway fairly quickly. It seemed like he was pretty set in going to Chicago. Chicago was pretty set on signing him, and the Pelicans weren't going to worry about matching. So I posted a day before, and the second that thing got announced, my views, my bids, my watches went through the roof. Most I've ever had on any card. I haven't sold a whole lot on eBay, but most I've ever had on any card. And that auction ends in, I think, 2 days. Nice. So I think that we're going to see that, just from what I'm seeing from my own perspective, we're going to see that Lonzo Ball market peak fairly soon and then probably drop off. And the thing is, I actually like Lonzo. I actually like Lonzo a little bit more long-term too. You know, we've talked about this enough in the past, the cultural aspect, and now he's playing in the Chicago market and he really improved last season too. So for me, there's a lot to like with Lonzo. I just know that right now is probably the most in the short term that I'm going to get. And I'll try and find a window to buy maybe a little bit of a month down the road or 2 months down the road. Or if the Bulls start the season slow, then maybe I can pick off a few pieces there. So
exactly.
First of all, shout out to you for helping me maximize my selling window, because that literally, when I saw that, Bulls interested in Ball, I was like, okay, I've got to sell, right? Because this thing's going to go nuts. And I think it is. I think that, in the next 24 hours, we'll probably see that market peak, maybe a little bit longer. But as more names get announced in free agency, I think that thing's really going to slow down.
It's all the things we said, right? 23 years old, going from New Orleans to a big market, big name, high upside. Like, it's all the reasons to people would be excited when he changes hands, and that's what's happening. So good on you. And you nailed it. Like, you'll just, even when this lulls down, like after summer league, people forget about NBA actually for a couple months. You might have buying windows, and like maybe then you'll want to dive into some of the more shorter printed stuff at prices when that stuff dies down. So totally good on you there. Just to stay on the Bulls real quick, I actually think this is a good thing for Zach LaVine. He's got his best supporting cast ever. Super flashy player. I actually think his market is decent. I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but to me, he's somebody whose name's probably not going to be as brought up right now as DeRozan and Lonzo, because he's, nothing's happening to him exactly, but he's somebody that I would now be looking to buy as this offseason goes on a little bit. So wait for the free agency noise to die down a little bit. Maybe wait for the Olympics to be over in case he has a couple big moments in the last 2 games. But now over the next month or so, that's a buy target for me, because I do think the Bulls too take a step up, whether they're the 4 through 6 seed. I think they're a 46 plus win team, maybe 44, 46 win team. And we see him taking progressions, especially on the offensive end. He's an elite all-world offensive player. So that is really interesting to me, Zach LaVine as a buy.
All right, let's talk about the other side of that, because Lonzo was the big news going from New Orleans to Chicago. Obviously, we'll see that market do what it's going to do over the next couple of days and weeks and months. Man, the Pelicans really seem like early on they're failing Zion early in his career. I don't want to go that far maybe yet, but they bring back Devontae Graham and Tomas Satoransky and just a bunch of dudes. Like, you've got to start to think about maximizing Zion, and it seems like there's already some frustration there. So what are your thoughts on what the Pelicans are doing around Zion right now?
I actually understand Griffin's approach this year. First of all, he's desperate to keep his job. I think we should not fail to mention, before the draft, they got Steven Adams and they off the books, and they traded for Jonas Valanciunas. And doing that and letting Lonzo walk and then bringing in somebody like Devontae Graham, it's pretty clear what they're doing. I think they want to do more of what they did towards the end of the year, point Zion, which is what they should have been doing all year. So point Zion, and then you surround him with more playmakers and shooters. So Devontae Graham, pretty good scorer, very good shooter, not great around the rim. He needs to improve there, but somebody I actually like. I was investing a lot in him when I first got into the hobby when things were still down, and he was kind of having that comeback, or he was like in the running for most improved player 2 years ago. So I actually have a ton of his stuff. I hope there's a window there when the Pelicans actually take a leap that I can kind of offload some of it. But I like Devontae Graham as a player. So I don't hate what the Pelicans did this year as much as last year. That's for sure, with that stupid Steven Adams signing, but there's no doubt about it. I mean, they're kind of hamstringing themselves no matter how they look at this. And I just hope that works, that point Zion thing, and you kind of, the Valanciunases and the Grahams of the world work around him. But, Zion should have every opportunity to take center stage. So as long as he stays healthy, it's the Zion show there this year. That's for sure.
And they can't be any worse getting Eric Bledsoe off the books too.
That's for sure.
As part of that, Steven Adams getting him out of town should help.
I love that deal for them. I really did. I mean, I'm a huge Valanciunas fan. I think Valanciunas is a great player, really underappreciated. And unless you were like grinding DFS last year, you might not know how good he really was.
Yeah.
Like he was a fantastic center last year. Struggles defensively a little bit, but pretty fantastic scorer and great rebounder as well. So I think he fits much nicer next to Zion, but defensively, they're going to be a dumpster fire. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They really are going to be a dumpster fire defensively.
All right. We should give ourselves plenty of time to close things out here with both my Lakers and your Knicks to discuss everything that's happened. Anything real quick before we kind of derail the show here with some Knicks and Lakers talks? Anybody else you want to touch on before we go there?
Just real quick to circle back to the Bulls very quickly. Kobe White, very interesting guy, right? He was probably the third or fourth biggest prospect in the RJ Zion class 2 years ago now. He's kind of buried there now, right? They have Lonzo, they have Caruso, they have DeRozan. I don't know. Clearly, he was falling out of favor with that coaching staff for most of last year. Towards the end of the year, they brought him back into the starting lineup, and he was at least producing from a numbers perspective. I don't know if I have some sort of bias against UNC point guards. I'm not a huge Kobe White guy either. As same with Cole Anthony. I think he has potential to be a good scorer, but to me, like honestly, his ceiling's like Lou Williams type if he ever actually could refine his skill set.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're holding. I'm luckily I bought a lot of guys in that class. Kobe White was never one of them. If you're holding Kobe White, I think you have to hold right now. That's really it. And you just wait for him to find himself in a better situation or to actually take a leap. But he's kind of in a holding pattern. If you're the opposite of me and you like Kobe White as a player, by all means, you're gonna have opportunities to buy now that he's taking a back seat.
All right, give me a second here on my Lakers, okay? Because
let's go. Laker time.
A whole lot happened with my Lakers, and it started out a little sketchy. We'll just say that. I mean that when it was first announced, and I think the rumors were starting to swirl first. I think with Woj that it was going to be Kuzma basically, and then picks for Buddy Hield.
Yep,
I got pretty excited. Right,
I would love that.
I would love that because Buddy's a shooter. That's what you need to surround LeBron with. You need the ball in LeBron's hands. You need him to create. You need him to kick. And you need him to have shooters. And I was pretty stoked for that. And then Shams comes from the top rope, and he's like, no. It's not Buddy Hield. It's going to be Kuz and picks and whatever scraps thrown in for Russell Westbrook. And I, like everybody else on NBA Twitter, had the same reaction. Like, what? There's one basketball. We don't need it. We don't need the basketball being taken away from LeBron and put in Russell Westbrook's hands, right? Where's the shooting going to come from? Will this team ever make a 3-point shot? And so that deal gets announced, and I'm kind of panicking, right? I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to waste these final years of LeBron with Russell Westbrook. The ball is going to be in Russell Westbrook's hands. He's going to be shooting 22% from three. He's going to be taking wild shots at the end of games, and it's just going to be a nightmare. And then they kind of come out and surprise me a little bit. Shout out to Pelinka and shout out to the Lakers. They add, on top of adding Russell Westbrook, they add Kendrick Nunn in a deal that was announced today. Love that.
Incredible.
And then they just add a bunch of freaking shooters around him, man. They get Wayne Ellington. They re-signed THT. They've got Malik Monk, Kent Bazemore. Carmelo Anthony comes to town. And Carmelo Anthony can still hit a three. Trevor Ariza is good for a corner three. And then Dwight Howard's back. So I really love how they rounded out this roster around LeBron and Anthony Davis. Obviously, all of this is going to hinge on their health. And a lot of the pieces that they brought in don't have a whole lot of value from a hobby perspective. Maybe outside of Nunn, maybe THT. But
Monk. I'm a huge Monk guy.
That's true. We got to talk about Monk in a second here because you and I are both in on Monk. But I think if anything, this just solidifies at least another window for LeBron. I think the team is
Sure.
good enough now as currently constructed. We'll see what happens come playoff time, as we've talked about. Again, there's only one basketball. You don't want it to be taken out of LeBron's hands at the end of games or when it's in crunch time, and you don't want Westbrook throwing up wild shots. But I think he can do enough in the regular season and early on in the postseason to take some of that load off LeBron, so LeBron is fresh.
Sure.
Come that time, we'll see what happens, and it'll position them. If the inevitable comes when one of those guys gets injured, they'll still be in a spot where they're not playing a play-in game because they've got someone capable like Russ to carry the team for a couple weeks if need be.
Yep.
So I've rambled on, very passionate. Most of any LeBron stuff that I'm going to buy is going to be coming from like a fractional aspect, right? Okay. Anything that I'm interested in from LeBron is mostly coming from Rally or Collectible or Otis. And actually, Collectible has a really interesting offering. I think it opens for trading tomorrow. They've got a BGS 9 dual logo man with Melo and LeBron.
Ooh.
Which, could you imagine what that card does if Melo and LeBron win a title together in LA?
It's really fun that they're teammates. It really is.
It's incredible. So all that to say is I love this for the Lakers. I love this for LeBron. Don't let people tell you that there's going to be spacing issues or, all that stuff. Okay, there might still be, but we'll just ignore that for now. I think how they surrounded the roster with these other pieces, especially Nunn, Monk, Ellington, these guys that can shoot and create a little bit, I think is good for them. So I think it's good for LeBron. I think it's good for chase for another ring, and I'm not completely throwing in the towel after the Westbrook trade.
Yeah, you nailed all the Laker analysis. I won't go too deep on it. Other than for me, in my personal grades, their offseason when the Westbrook trade went from an F to like through today a B plus. So yeah, everything you said. There's no way around it. You cannot tell me that Westbrook and LeBron feel good together, fit well together. Right. They don't. Westbrook is the most ball dominant player we've had in the league for a long time. LeBron needs a ball. It's that simple. Then you throw an AD into the mix. It just doesn't work. However, what they've done over the last couple of days was absolutely the best possible way to build a roster around those three stars. So yeah, you nailed it there. So, and the only other thing there is GM LeBron has been bad for most of his career. Like, let's not beat around the bush.
Don't remind me.
And
yeah, it's been brutal.
Westbrook is he's a LeBron guy now. Like by all reports, they've become pretty good friends over the last couple of years. Westbrook's coming home. Maybe you can get him to buy in a little bit. That'd be great. I want to talk about Westbrook from a hobby perspective quickly, because to me, and he's one of those, again, late 2010s Topps Chrome, which are lower pop generally, 2008 Topps Chrome. But to me, he's about to be positioned to have the best hobby value we ever had, because as you said, this Laker team now, with what they've done with all these shooters and building out and doing a good job getting guys to take less money to come there, by the way. That's just a sidebar. But, he's going to be now in a position where we've already know he's one of the best regular season players in a long time. He's triple-double king, all of that. But if they actually can make this work and compete, he's going to be in his best position by far to win a title. Obviously they had that one title appearance when the puppies were all young with him, Harden and KD. But, if he wins a title alongside LeBron, I do think, listen, just put one ring on his finger. I don't care how he gets it done. You're going to see that go to new heights. So think about buying Westbrook if you're a Westbrook guy already. That's all I'll say about that. He's a flashy guy that has hobby hype, deserves hobby hype, and is going to be in his best situation to get a ring that he's ever been in. So
yeah, and just quickly before I let you get to your Knicks, I'll give you your spotlight, your 15 minutes in the spotlight. 2008 Topps Chrome Russell Westbrook PSA 10 pop count is 119 on that.
Exactly.
So price is already up a little bit. Obviously not a whole lot of sales, but people taking advantage. Current price on that is $2,000. So up about 25% over the last 2 weeks, which would include some time after that deal was announced. So, I wouldn't hate even looking for some of those things raw, honestly.
I was gonna say the same exact thing.
Yeah. If you can't get your hands on $2,000, or even a PSA 9, $395, that's got a pop at 271. There's not, like you said, there's not a whole lot of these in circulation.
That you said a PSA 9 is $375.
Yeah, on a 395 out of 271 for his 2008 Topps Chrome.
10 that is only 100 something pop.
Yeah, so PSA 9's 395 with the 271 pop, and a PSA 10's got 119 pop, and it's $2,000.
I love the PSA 9 buy. I might buy one of those if I can go find it. I'm serious. That's a great buy. PSA 9, the stigma is getting better on it. And it's especially for things like that have low pop on the PSA 10. They were lower circulation to begin with. The PSA 9 will always make more sense on a card like that. To me, I love that. So yeah, good. Thank you for the numbers there. Westbrook. And the last thing, Monk and Kendrick Nunn. You mentioned them quickly. I know we're rambling about the Lakers, but both guys, Kendrick Nunn actually had a lot of hobby love when he was just this darling that made an all-rookie team 2 years ago out of nowhere for the Heat. They had to let him walk based on their contract situation here. But he's going to fit really well around them. And I like it's a really interesting situation to see somebody take a 2-year, $10 million deal. I believe that's what it was, right?
Yep.
At this early on in his career. Like there was a report, Sham said the Knicks offered him much more money to come be the point guard there, but he's wants to go get a ring this early stage of his career and take less money. If he could do that and then go get his bigger contract and then go be a bigger piece of a team. I'm not saying he's any kind of superstar, but he certainly can be a sixth, seventh guy on a team. That's an interesting spot. He's somebody that has hobby values. Just keep an eye on him. Monk is the other guy to me. So finally, late bloomer last year, but was a huge guy from that 2017 class. There was a lot of people debating Frank Ntilikina, Malik Monk, Dennis Smith, Donovan Mitchell was the 4 guards towards the end of the lottery that year. We all know how that shook out. But Malik Monk was somebody I've been waiting on, and he really made the most of his time on that Hornets team last year. Finally shot 40% from 3. I was really hoping the Knicks would get him and maybe we'll transition into the Knicks there. But I'm just saying, also another guy that when those guys are resting in the regular season, when he's gonna have so many looks at great shots on this team. I just like him. I do think he'll have more opportunities later in his career to have even bigger role. So he's somebody.
Here's the thing, real quick before I let you transition. We'll take another half a second here. Malik Monk, Panini Prism PSA 10 in a silver, because he's from that 2017 class. There's not a whole lot of either the base or the silver, but I think he's at a low enough price point that you can target that silver. Was going for $75 before the trade was announced, or before the signing was announced to LA. That thing quickly popped up to 125. But here's the thing, 1-year deal, right? With the Lakers. If he shows out as a 6th man or 7th man and can continue to show that he's a 40% guy from 3 or 38, 39% guy from 3, there might be another deal. He's just 23 still. He might be able to sign another deal going after that. And there might actually be some hobby value with Malik Monk, not only short-term with the Lakers and when he's filling in for some of these resting stars, but also down the road if he gets another contract opportunity. So really cheap guy. Think he can get there. I don't know what the ceiling is on Malik Monk's hobby value. Obviously we're talking about 2017. He's 5 years into his career now by the time that he's up for another contract, but pretty cheap if you want to take a stab. There might also be a point that you can offload some of that in the postseason if they make a run too.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. Even if his hobby ceiling is $250 on that PSA 10, like just say forever in his career, like maybe that's the player he is. We still think that he has a lot of room to grow in that case. So somebody we both really like, 23 years old, and he's Kentucky pedigree, can create a little bit as instead of just shooting. So maybe it was a late bloomer. Maybe hopefully last year wasn't just the 1-year wonder, but in a great position to succeed. I'll do the transition right over to my Knicks quickly. Please tell me it's good news for RJ Barrett. That's all that matters. I think it's good news for RJ Barrett. That's what I'll say. So the Knicks are basically running it back with Evan Fournier and our new rookies. So Evan Fournier replaces our Reggie Bullock, and everything else is the same. We re-signed Derrick Rose, we signed Nerlens Noel, re-signed Alec Burks, re-signed Taj Gibson. As somebody that absolutely adored that team last year, I'm not going to be that mad at that. Now, here's the problem. The Knicks had cap space, the most cap space in the league, $52 million. You have to spend it or you keep kicking the can down the road. The thing, all this really tells me is that the front office thinks their way of acquiring stars through a trade, because you need to have those contracts to match those big trades up. That's really all this tells me. And also reports came out today that pretty much all those years were 2+1. So 2-year deals with a team option on the third. Fournier, I believe, will be a 3+1. So nothing should be not movable. So I don't hate this Knicks offseason as much as some of Knicks Twitter does. All I'll say from a hobby perspective is by basically running it back with a little bit of improvement in the roster, I think it's a great situation for our guy RJ, because he's going to have the same role as he did last year with the opportunity to take that 3rd-year leap. He's still, again, we've mentioned he's only 20. He just had his first sip of a drink a couple months ago. So he he's got a real opportunity to take another leap here with the same roster around him. And same thing with Julius Randle, will be the centerpiece there. So not too much on my Knicks. It is what it is. I was hoping for more of a point guard upgrade, and that might still happen. There is going to be some more cap space they have because that Rose contract is going to be on the early bird rights, it looks like. So maybe a Dennis Schroeder type of thing, if they maneuver things, might still be coming to the Knicks. So keep an eye there. But not too much on New York.
Yeah, things to keep in mind too is Emmanuel Quickly, Obi Toppin, maybe some steps forward for those guys. I don't know what you think about Mitchell Robinson having a little bit of hobby love. Obviously, big man, maybe not there yet, but he's kind of a name that pops up in our DFS circles too. Might get a little hobby love. I guess my biggest question with your New York Knicks is Thibodeau going to let RJ Barrett initiate some of the offense a little bit more this year? That was, like you said, you think maybe his role can grow a little bit. That's my biggest hope for RJ Barrett, and especially for his hobby value and for his growth as a player, is just for him to be able to initiate a little bit more.
I'll take that from both Quickly and Barrett, because if they actually don't make any more major moves and they're actually running with Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickly, and then second round pick Deuce McBride, who I love, by the way, one of my favorite picks of the draft, but that's neither here nor there. If that's actually their point guard rotation, yeah, there's no doubt RJ Barrett's going to have his ball in his hands more. Alec Burks is still there, and he'll kind of be that backup bench point guard as well. But yeah, Quickly and Barrett, if this roster does stay how it is right now, are in very good positions to have the ball in their hands more and see their already growing hobby love take another leap next year for sure.
All right, we'll leave it there. Some of the most fun times in the hobby, some of the most fun times in the sports world. Gary and I both love the transaction along with the action. So MLB trade talk, NBA draft, NBA free agency. We're going to transition next week because football is really picking up. And as someone who is going to be playing a whole lot of preseason DFS, yes, that's right, there is NFL preseason DFS. I will be producing content for it. If you're interested in preseason DFS, yes, you heard me right, NFL preseason DFS. If you're interested, check out the analysis tab on establishwitharun.com. We've got a preseason package there to give you everything you need. Go ahead and get signed up. You'll get all my content. You'll get all that good stuff there. But if not, just hang out here, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. And like I said, we'll be shifting hard to NFL talk.
Show your boy Cody some love, man. He crushed the preseason game. He crushed the preseason game. He's ready to go for the Hall of Fame game this week. We're really excited. Obviously at ETR, football is our bread and butter. Cody and I are both huge football guys. We cannot wait. We're right around the corner. Football's coming up, and it will be covered heavily on this show. Meanwhile, I hope you enjoyed the NBA free agency talk. I know we're over an hour here, but we missed a week, so I hope you all enjoyed it. And we got NBA Summer League this week, so watch for a little market movement for second and third year guys. Very exciting stuff coming up.
All right. For Gary, for Ben DiNucci, Mason Rudolph, I'm Cody. See you later.
Peace.